Greetings everyone, I'm Stefan, and before you click away thinking that this video is some sort of early April Fool's joke, I can assure you it's not. We have a build to work with and a strategy to go along with it. Now, you might be thinking that this build is really wonky for being a clerk build. After all, it's not even a mega corporation. But that is what makes it powerful. We're instead going to be relying entirely on quantity over quality. The old Soviet principle still stands today. We're going to be going for a massive wave assault of clerks, and nothing is going to stop our empire from just growing out of proportion. Now, you might be wondering if this build could work with something other than clerks. I'd love to tell you that this is a very specific clerk niche thing, but really if you use the strategies in this video and apply them to a regular empire, that regular empire is going to balloon out of proportions and probably dominate as well. However, the purpose of today's video is to show that clerks can actually work and can be a powerful empire type. So let's get into the empire and I'll show you all of its features. So first and foremost, you can see that we are void dwellers. Void dwellers will start with 3 habitats instead of a single planet, and our growth is going to be very easily multiplied by just building more habitats. This is the primary reason why this build actually works, because without void dwellers, we would not have such insane growth. In addition to the early growth, we will also get the Void Dweller trait, which is quite wonderful. In addition to the early Void Dweller growth, we're also going to get a very good amount of resources from the Void Dweller perk. All of our pops will be producing 15% extra, and since we want to minimize the amount of pops working normal jobs and maximize the amount of clerks, this will really help us out in that regard. However, we do come out with minus 10% pop growth speed, which isn't that big of a deal. After all, we're countering it with 3 different things. Rapid Breeders provides an obvious 10% pop growth. Inwards Perfection, which is the first time I've used this civic, provides 10% pop growth speed as well, and Fanatic Xenophobe provides an additional 20%. Now, we could be going with Fanatic Xenophile instead for the trade value, but we're not going for quality over quantity, we're going for Mass Assault Doctrine. So instead, we're going to happily unite against the Xeno, and actually not do much about it. So instead, we're going to happily unite against the Xeno and sing our good old Xenophobia song. However, we won't be able to do much in terms of warfare because we are pacifists. Pacifist is a requirement for Inward Perfection, but it is also a fairly decent ethic. If you're not actually planning on going to war, Pacifist will provide you with an edict to increase your happiness across all your planets by 10%. A 10% happiness boost is a 6% stability boost. And since stability is one of the few ways we can increase trade value from clerks, we're going to want to max out stability via pacifism. It's also going to be modifying our merchants, and since we have merchant guilds, we're going to have plenty of those around as well. Otherwise, the rest of the build is quite self-explanatory. Dictatorial is very good, and since we're going to be spending all of our influence on habitats, we really don't want oligarchic with its extra elections. And as for the other traits on our people, we have Thrifty and Charismatic to just boost clerks even further. We're taking Unruly and Not Adaptive as negatives, Unruly because it's basically a free pick, and with Void Dwellers, Not Adaptive is virtually a free pick as well. So let's go ahead and start the strategizing, shall we? So as you start off, you're going to want to look at your surroundings. We're not really going to want to expand too much, and instead we're going to rely on defending ourselves with strong choke points. So here we're just going to go for our 2 nearest choke points, and we're not actually going to really expand past that. As Void Dwellers, we're going to want to save all our influence on habitats, and we're also going to want to increase our alloy production as much as possible early on. Not only are we going to get additional growth from extra habitats, we're also going to kind of need them, because otherwise our few initial ones will fill up, and we're going to start suffering massive employment issues. We're going to want to get an alloy foundry as soon as possible on one of our planets, and we're going to want to replace this bureaucrat office as soon as possible as well. In the early game, we're not going to worry too much about admin cap, and instead we're going to focus purely on expanding and getting new habitats up and running. We will want to get a few scientists up and running quite early, but the main focus for the early game is going to be alloys. We're going to want to build new habitats instead of upgrading existing ones as much as possible because that will provide us with the most pop growth, and more pop growth will mean more clerks. So let's go ahead and start the game. I will be doing a few time lapses, so if you really want to catch all the micro that I'm doing in the meantime, you can go to the bottom right corner and slow down the video. But otherwise, I'm going to focus primarily on strategy and let the micro just be in the time lapses. Now, as for our first tradition tree, we're going with adaptability. Adaptability is very good. We're getting a free building slot from it, as well as a variety of other very good bonuses. Once we get to our first ascension perk, we're going to be going with Voidborn to make sure that we have even more building slots. As you might know, adaptability gives you a free building slot, and Voidborn gives you an additional 2. This means that we're going to have plenty of open building slots on our habitats, and we can optimize them even further and build more clerk posts on them as well. Now, as far as clerks go, early on we're not actually going to want to go for them. This is because we want to produce as many resources as possible early to make sure we can expand as much as possible, make as much pop growth as possible, or more clerks in the long run. The first additional habitat that we'll build is a mineral one. We'll want to expand our mineral and alloy output as much as possible because that is going to be our primary bottleneck at these early points in the game for extra growth. Overall, we're going to want to specialize our planets as much as possible, and as you can see, this is going to be a minerals / alloys planet. This is going to be a food planet. Eventually we're going to take out this alloy foundry, and an energy planet. And our capital is going to be primarily a research planet. I normally don't specialize my planets this early, but since we are playing with clerks, we are going to want to go for maximum min-max. We're also going to want to go for robots as soon as possible. Pops are pops, and droids can actually serve as clerks, so we're going to have them do that job. Our second new habitat is going to be built over an energy planet. We're going to want to get energy from this one, and our other habitat is actually going to be built relatively soon, so we'll be getting plenty of minerals from that one as well. At this point, we can also get Voidborn. It's going to provide us a whole bunch of extra building slots, which we will fill eventually with specialization buildings. Also, if you're playing along with me and at this point you have no consumer goods buildings, you'll also want to go for a militarized economy. You can actually go for this a little bit earlier than I did, and this is just going to provide you with extra alloys because you are not producing consumer goods from jobs. We're producing consumer goods from our trade policy, and we're actually getting plenty to satisfy our needs. If you have too many alloys at any point while playing Void Dwellers, you can either wait to get more influence for more habitats, or you can invest in your defenses and sell some of your alloys to be able to build more buildings on your habitats. Overall, selling alloys is not the most efficient thing to do, but it's better to be safe than sorry, and getting too greedy for habitats can kill a lot of Void Dweller runs. At this point, we're also going to want to go for expansion as our second tradition tree. We're going to capitalize on colonization fever, most likely on our second habitat, and we're going to get an additional 10% to pop growth speed. The other expansion bonuses don't really affect us too much, but we do want to go for that extra ascension perk as soon as possible, so we are going to complete the expansion tree. Yeah, as you can see here, we just colonized this habitat and we already have 3 open building slots. This is amazing. At this point, we're going to start struggling with robots, and you're going to have to start juggling your pops around between your mineral habitats and your normal habitats, because robots will grow on all habitats, but they can only really do food and minerals jobs. You are going to need a decent chunk of energy credit income to be able to actually deal with this and resettle pops as necessary. Otherwise, you're going to start seeing unemployment across your planets, and you're not going to have a very good time at all. Alrighty. Now that we're in year 32, we can finally start actually getting clerks on our planets. Yeah, it takes a while for the clerk thing to actually start happening, but once it does, we are gonna go hard on it. So now we're just gonna start with commercial zones on planets with low amenities. Later on, we're gonna expand our operation to pretty much be half of our population, just being clerks. Yes, we finally got synthetic crystal plants, and with that, we should be able to research the technology to upgrade our commercial zones pretty quickly. Once upgraded, a commercial zone will cost 1 crystal to upkeep, but they will give 10 clerk jobs and 1 merchant job. The merchants are going to be really good at providing extra amenities and trade value, as well as a bit of unity. The clerk jobs are going to help us deal with the jobs crisis in this empire. Alrighty, now that we're 50 years in, we have quite a decent empire to show for ourselves. We have a 249 pops at year 50. This is quite incredible and can only really be achieved via void dwellers. If you take a look at some other empires in the galaxy, we see 72, 71, 45. Yeah, as you can see, we are doing quite well, and this is Grand Admiral AI, so yeah, that's something to think about. The only real empire in the galaxy is this one that can hold a threat to us, but they're the harmless Blorg, so of course, they certainly won't harm us. Seriously though, this empire has gone to quite a few wars, and over the past little while has absorbed at least 2 other empires, so it's been doing quite well for itself. We, on the other hand, have just been sitting here in a corner of the galaxy, farming away and getting a lot of trade value. At this point we have 337. That is going to rapidly go up as we build more and more clerks on our planets. Ultimately, we need a baseline of some research and some alloy output to make sure that we can actually expand and actually do science to research more clerk techs. But otherwise, the rest of our resources are going to be primarily put into consumer goods. Overall, the clerk strategy is working quite nicely. We have plenty of merchants and plenty of clerks on our planets. Make sure that we have sufficient amenities. We're soon going to research the upgrade for habitats, and we're going to be able to upgrade our habitats, get more housing on them, and make sure our population continues to grow. I think there's one habitat which has completely ceased growing because we simply don't have enough housing. We're going to have to remedy that by just building more housing. Since we do want to boost our clerks even further, our third civic is going to be police state. Adaptability is one of the few things to actually boost clerks, and there's really nothing better to choose, except perhaps memorialists, as long as we go ahead and actually upgrade the buildings. However, I'm not planning on spamming the memorialist building, I'm planning on spamming clerks, so instead, let's go for police state. Let's do a quick trade check-in. At this point, we have 1,171 trade value, which I'm willing to bet is more than the trade value in this galaxy combined. All in all, you can't really make commercial pacts with other empires, but if there is a criminal syndicate, they can still build branch offices on you even though you are isolationist. So if you're planning on playing this build in a multiplayer scenario, make sure you have a friend that can go with a criminal syndicate, because this amount of pops means a lot of billing slots for a corporate office, and basically all of our planets are producing massive amounts of energy just cause. Otherwise, as you guys can see, we're doing very well in terms of research, very well in terms of alloys. In fact, I've just queued up a pretty big fleet to be built on one of my stations, and we are doing extremely well on Unity. One of the biggest perks of playing a build that involves trade is you get plenty of Unity as long as you go for the proper policy. Now, with our build, we cannot really go for the trade policy of the Trade League. We could potentially get into a Trade League if we become a vassal of one of its members, but that's not something that really happens in a single player, and it would pretty much require a buddy to set it up in a multiplayer game. At that point though, you're going to be making a lot of resources. Early on, it does end up being a bit of a slog, as you have to carefully micromanage your habitats, not run into any problems. You really want to get robots as early as possible for extra pops, but if you're in this stage of robots and haven't gotten droids yet for a very long time, you might start getting problems with, your robots not being able to do clerk jobs and stuff like that. We got relatively unlucky in this run with droids, but we still pulled out in the end and were able to manage things very nicely. Remember, if you have too many robots on your habitats, just build some food jobs and send them to work there. Food can be easily sold on the market for very good profit margins, so there's always an out in case you're stuck in that situation. Otherwise, I think that about does it. Let me show you another empire that I've played with this exact build, real quick. They are the Clerks Supreme #1, and in year 300, we managed to obtain 2.7k trade value overall. I've done basically the same thing here, and yeah, just going full Clerks and maximizing trade value is not that bad of an idea. Once you start spamming Clerks on your habitats and solve the jobs issue, this build is very fun. So I really encourage you guys to try this out, and I really encourage you guys to try this out with a friend in a multi-game. Just this empire alone would net nearly 1,000 energy for a criminal empire, more if you had actual crime on your planets. Anyways, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'd like to give a special thank you to my Patreons that have been with me this whole time, allowing me to do stuff like this. Silly builds that actually dominate in-game. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye.